Hallå och välkomna tillbaka till Erik Penser Banks Bolagsdag. Nu är det dags för den sista presentationen här och det är Acarix och vd Helen Ljungdahl Round. Välkommen Helen och varsågod att köra.
Tack så mycket. Jag kommer switcha över här till engelska på presentationen för vi har internationella visitors också. Men first of all, thank you. It's a pleasure to participate in this event today. And I also want to thank the Penser team for accommodating this presentation on Teams as I'm based in the US. As you heard, my name is Helen Ljungdahl Round. I am the president and CEO of Acarix. Acarix is a company that's focusing on very innovative acoustics and AI-based technology in diagnostics, and we are now focusing on cardiac diagnostics. The presentation today will really focus on an overview of our company and the transformation that we are currently undergoing, going from a very R&D-based focused organization into a commercially successful company. And we have a strong focus now on the US market. We are in the process of launching our product, the CAD Score system, in the US, and we have done this in a very systematic way, building our business to secure a solid platform that we can build our commercialization on. To date, we are starting to see the signs of a strong momentum, but and that's also due to these building blocks that I'm talking about. But we also need to recognize that it takes time for a company of our size to get established on the US market. To start off with, just a disclaimer, which you're all very familiar with. We're a publicly traded company. And then I thought I would take just a minute for some of you who maybe are not familiar with Acarix, just to give you a very high-level overview of the company. We are a Swedish medical technology company, and we were born out of academia in Denmark. Our focus is really on combining acoustic, very ultra-sensitive acoustics, where we're listening to the body and linking that to AI and working in the diagnostic space. And as I mentioned, we focus on heart disease right now. At the moment, we are driving hard in the US. We have important approvals in place in the US. We have a regulatory FDA de novo clearance, and we have reimbursement, and there's a large medical need. So that's why we're focusing so hard now on the US. We've been building out our management team, and we've been able to recruit individuals that have very specific skills and knowledge that we need to be successful here in the US. And as I mentioned, we are traded on the First North Premier Growth Market. But our mission is really on transforming early cardiac diagnostics. And I hope in this presentation that you will get a sense of how are we intending to do this and what opportunities do we see. But let's start at the core, the main issue that we work on, and that is identifying patients at low risk of heart disease. The starting point really is chest pain. Chest pain is often associated with the heart, but it's not necessarily linked to the heart. So chest pain, many of you will have experienced this. It's very common. 20 to 40% of adults are expected to experience chest pain at some point. So a physician seeing a patient like this that you see on the screen will prompt a number of investigations. There are very few doctors that will send this patient home. But what's so surprising is that as patients go through this workflow, 9 out of 10 in 9 out of 10, the chest pain is not linked to the heart. So it's a question of, is there a way to quickly assess these patients, identify those at low risk, and take them out of the system? And this is really where our CAD Score system comes into place. So as you can see, this is a small device. It's placed non-invasively on top of the chest. The round part here is an ultrasensitive microphone. And I just have to say this really slowly. This microphone listens to the blood flow in the coronary arteries. And if the arteries are healthy, there's a very smooth sound. But as plaque starts to build up, a murmur is created, a turbulence is created, and the microphone will pick that up. And it will run that through an AI algorithm, and then the score will come up on the screen. Overall, it takes about 10 minutes to do this assessment, but the actual listening part is about 3 minutes. And if you get a score below 20, indicating you have low risk, the physicians can rule this patient out with a high degree of certainty. Our negative predictive value is 96.2%. We have a lot of studies have been done over the years, 15 years of R&D. We have 45 patents. We have thousands of patients in clinical studies. This has resulted in a regulatory approval in Europe with CE marking, but also in the US. We don't yet have reimbursement in Europe. We're working on that. But in the US, we have received a CPT3 code approved. And to date, the technology CAD Score system has been used on about 26,000 patients. So I talked about this traditional workflow. This patient presents in front of a doctor, and this is what normally happens. So stress tests at arbetsprov in Sweden, nuclear stress tests, angiograms, CTs, etc. And this can take 3 months, I think is very optimistic, but it can take up to 10 months with waiting times, etc. Our value proposition really is to transform this. And the CAD Score system is getting greater and greater acceptance as a first-line diagnostic aid, something you do before you go into this, almost as an EKG assessment that is done. And as I mentioned, it takes about 10 minutes. So, of course, coming into a market like the US, we needed some credibility in justifying this positioning. So we started having conversations with the American College of Cardiology. It's a big organization, professional organization with about 54,000 cardiologists. And started having discussions in about April, May last year. We signed a collaboration agreement together in September, and then the team worked very quickly on defining how should the CAD Score system be used. And the work here went faster than we thought. And in May, we launched this clinical workflow. And what essentially it says is patients that present with a stable chest pain, as you saw in the picture, physicians should be doing a history, physical exam, and an EKG, and then the CAD Score system. And anyone then that has a CAD Score system below 20 can be ruled out. Anyone above, it doesn't necessarily say that they have coronary artery disease, but we cannot rule them out with the CAD Score system. And they should follow that blue track, that diagnostic track that I just showed you. The exception are patients that are over 70, multiple comorbidities or risk factors. Here, it doesn't really make sense to do the CAD Score system, but it will be because there will be a low chance of us ruling it out. But having the ACC work with us on this has given us a very strong support for a first-line diagnostic aid positioning in the workflow of chest pain patients. So then if we look commercially, when the company started going commercial, we started in Europe with the CE marking. We have sales in Germany. We've had some sales in Switzerland, Austria, some in the Nordics, and we're working in the UK, but we don't yet have reimbursement. So that means that we have to work in the private market. But we learned a lot, and we validated our business model. And then when we had the FDA de novo clearance, the CPT3 code, and recognizing the need in the US, the large opportunity that we have there, we decided end of last year that we need to really focus on the US and not get too distracted with all the opportunities we see around the world. Our business model is quite simple, actually. We sell the system, the CAD Score system that you see here, the device. And then for each assessment, a patch is attached. And these are single-use patches. And so a physician would either buy or lease the CAD Score system, and then they buy on an ongoing basis patches. So coming into the US then, of course, we knew the business model. We pressure tested the business model. But the medical need was actually greater than we thought. So there are a lot of chest pain patients, as I mentioned earlier, in the US. It's expected to be around 18 million. And trying to manage this high workload, the American College of Cardiology, together with American Heart Association, two large organizations, came out with new chest pain guidelines at the end of 2021. They didn't know about the CAD Score then at that point, but they did say that low-risk patients need to be identified and ruled out. And that's where the CAD Score system sort of so beautifully slots in between that need and the recommendation to identify and rule out low-risk patients. So just taking you back through what we've been talking about, I said in my introduction that we've been putting important building blocks in place. 2002 was really about building up a subsidiary here in the US. It took us about 3-4 months to have a subsidiary and product in the warehouse and being able to take orders. We started building up our US management team. We had a very first sale, which was early in Q1. Then our reimbursement code became back active here in the middle of last summer. And then we've been working with the ACC, we've been working through our sales channel, and we're really starting now to see the momentum. We still have a way to go to really lift off, but a lot of the important building blocks were put in place. So a few words about our geographic footprint. I think you all know that building a sales organization can be very expensive. So we have decided on a hybrid sales model with a few select sales representatives, but then also partnership with commission-based sales agents. April last year, we didn't have a coverage. We started recruiting. We did a lot of discussions of who do we want to work with around the country. So by December, we covered 13 states. And then we realized we got to go faster. And we've identified a large group of sales representatives, which gave us access to an additional 40 representatives. And now we're covering 43 states. And I'm happy to report that as of July, we have full coverage now in the US, and now we're starting to think about how can we regionally start to structure this to work even more effectively. We cover clinics, we go to hospitals. IDNs are large hospital networks. Then there's also networks of primary care organizations and urgent care that we're starting to have discussions with. And an important customer for us is really the military healthcare, the Veterans Health Administration, where we've had some nice progress, and I'm going to talk about that. But obviously, we talk to cardiologists, emergency departments, urgent care, and primary care. I want to say a few words about reimbursement codes. We did have our reimbursement code become effective last year, but that doesn't mean that it's automated. We really have to work state by state, insurance company by insurance company, almost clinic by clinic, patient by patient, to make sure that doctors and clinics get reimbursed from these insurance companies when they do a CAD Score test. Today, we are tracking at about $160 per assessment, but there are payments up to $500 from some major payers. Given that they pay $75 for a patch, this is kind of an attractive business model for the physicians. We track claim submissions. We want to see increases. And of course, we don't see all of them. But so far, during March to June, we saw a 26% increase, which means that doctors are filing claims, and we're working through this. And I expect this now to continue to increase. And we do work very closely with the clinics, but at the end of the day, they need to do the work and they need to make sure that they get paid from the insurance companies. I just wanted to give an example of a US clinic. So our business model, again, we sell systems, we sell patches. How quickly we get into different sales channels varies greatly. In a clinic, it can take 3 to 6 months, but if we're looking at large healthcare systems, it could take 12 to 24 months. So the way we think about it is that we need to deliver sales in the short term and we need to build for the long term. But what's really interesting is to see the patch utilization now among American or US-based doctors. This is a recent customer. I actually just met with this customer earlier this week. They're tracking at about 100 patches per month, which is significantly higher than we've seen in Europe earlier. And the value to us is about 1 million Swedish per year, but they also make about similar in profit. So it's a real win-win situation for them to be using the CAD Score system. So there's a financial incentive, but there's also clinical incentive to rule out low-risk patients. But the US does represent clinics with higher patient volume, increased patch per day use, and then of course we also have higher pricing versus Europe as most life science companies. I want to say a few words about the VA. This is an important customer, and the more we learn, the greater of an interest we have in this in the VA. Our initial discussions began last summer. And then usually the VA takes its time. It can take up to 2 years to get adopted, but they saw a very clear need for the CAD Score system there. And it worked quite quickly. In February, we received the first order from Louisiana, and that was one order valued at $1 million without repeat patches. So that was just system and initial patches. Since then, we've been working with them on incorporating CAD Score system into routine use. As I mentioned earlier, we really want to see the CAD Score system used early, similar to an EKG, and we're making really good progress, and I hope very soon we can announce that we have got sign-off on this. But we're also talking to multiple VAs. We're already twice in discussions with twice as many as we were earlier in the year. And of course, our overall objective is to get a national contract. But it's not only important from a financial point of view, this gives us a lot of credibility. In order to sell into the US government, we had to go through quite a rigorous due diligence process. We cleared it, and as we're talking outside now, we do, you know, it does get recognition when we say that we've been able to secure the VA as a customer. I talked a little bit about where we're heading. In 2021, we issued guidance. And this looks like maybe a bold guidance, but we're very much working towards this and we're tracking on this. Our goal is to hit 3,000 CAD Score systems installed by the end of 2024 with revenue of 200 million Swedish krona and a gross margin of 80%. We're already above the target for the gross margin, but we're working to reach the others as well. Our focus is on the US market, managing these different sales cycles, managing the reimbursement. We did step back in Europe to allow ourselves to focus sufficiently on the US, but we are already now starting to think about reimbursement approvals in Europe as well. And of course, on an ongoing basis for a company of ours, you know, the stage that we are in, financing is really important. But we are matching the market trends you see in the US, so we will continue to drive a strong focus on the US. We have a good team. I mentioned it earlier. 5 of us are based here in the US. We have our CFO, Christian. He's based in Malmö in Sweden. And Thomas and Klaus, they are leading our operations and also R&D functions, and they're based in Denmark. Our board, we work very closely with them. We have a recent addition of a board member, and Mikael Thorén here, he was appointed at the annual meeting here in May. So a very strong team working together and having the expertise we really need to be successful in the US. So to conclude, I hope I've given you a picture of our technology. It is truly unique. There is no other technology like ours on the US market or anywhere else. Combining acoustics, the ability to listen to the body, and combining that with AI, and then using that in diagnostics. And our R&D team has done a phenomenal job documenting the technology, so that has led to our regulatory approvals. Getting into the US is exciting, but it does mean that we also have to keep a realistic view on how long does it take for this to really take off. But our metrics are really compelling, and I'm really, really happy of the team that I get to work with every single day to make this happen. So with that, I really thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions at this time. And I think, Ludwig, we're switching over to Swedish now, right?
That's correct, Helen. Tack för en trevlig presentation av bolaget. Tänkte börja lite med att den här VA-ordern som ni då kallar en genombrottsorder. Kan du berätta lite exakt vad det här innebär och kanske lite när det här kan ge ett tydligt utslag på försäljningen? Liksom, vad är det som krävs för att man ska se det här?
Ja, det är en jättebra fråga och jag får den frågan ganska ofta faktiskt. Men det första man ska tänka på är att det här är ett stort nätverk som täcker hela USA. Det är svårt att komma in, men när man väl har kommit in så är det lättare att gå till ytterligare, man ser sjukhus då och kliniker. Så vi fokuserar väldigt mycket tid på att säkerställa den här ordern i Louisiana. Och sen när vi väl hade sålt in så tar det tid för att säkerställa hur de ska använda CAD Score-systemet. Och det där den här, vi kan ju säga på engelska standard operating procedure, det är en rutinutredning, att det faller in i deras rutin. Så det är en investering för framtiden. Det är en investering i tid från vår sida och från deras sida för att vi ska kunna lyckas med CAD Score-systemet. Sen hur många patches som kommer att användas per dag, det har vi faktiskt inte riktigt sett ännu, utan vi väntar på den här SOP:n, att vi kommer igång nu ordentligt och sen får vi göra en bedömning. Men det vi har sett i USA, det är ju att generellt nu så ligger vi på en 3-4 patches per dag. Min förväntan är att VA kommer ligga över det, men vi får se när vi kommer igång här. Men jag tror det är viktigt också att påpeka att vi har ju diskussioner med många andra sjukhus inom VA. Så det pågår ett ganska intensivt arbete nu med VA och vårt mål är ju att säkerställa ett nationellt kontrakt inom inte så lång framtid. Men där är också saker som tar tid. Men vi lägger en väldigt bra bas inom VA för att vi ska kunna lyckas och det här ska då bli en viktig kund för oss.
Just det. Ja, och du nämnde att ni har fått en CPT-kod. Jag tänkte, har ni planer på att förbättra liksom det hälsoekonomiska paketet ytterligare med ytterligare studier för att liksom få upp ersättningsnivån? Hur ser du på det arbetet?
Så vi har viss data publicerad redan. Vi gjorde en undersökning, en studie i England som visade på signifikanta besparingar. Det låg på ungefär 92 miljoner pund per år i besparingar, som är ungefär 120 miljoner dollar. Så det är ganska signifikant. Men vi har faktiskt en undersökning, en utredning som pågår med ett team uppe i Boston för att titta specifikt på den amerikanska marknaden. Men när vi pratar med läkare inom de här större sjukvårdssystemen så faller sig ganska naturligt att det kommer att ske besparingar. Därför att man kommer att kunna rule out de här patienterna som har låg risk så att de inte fyller upp systemet. Men vi arbetar på här också så vi får lite amerikansk data.
Just det, jättebra. Sen tänkte jag på utvecklingen för patchanvändningen. Hur har den sett ut? Antar att den trendar uppåt, liksom, såld patch per enhet installerad eller vad man ska kalla nyckeltalet. Och hur fördelar den sig? Är det några som är jättestora konsumenter eller är det ganska jämnt fördelat?
Jättebra fråga. Det här med patchanvändning, om man tittar på vår affärsmodell, den är ju ett nyckeltal som vi tittar väldigt noga på. Det vi har sett generellt är att patchanvändningen i USA är betydligt högre än vad vi har sett i Europa. Det är dels då därför att det är så höga patientvolymer och de jobbar väldigt effektivt. Primärvårdskliniker ser 40-50 patienter per dag. Så de måste ju jobba igenom alla de här patienterna på ett så snabbt sätt som möjligt. Men siffrorna är högre och de som ligger högst, de ligger nästan på 6 patcher per dag. Men genomsnittet ligger mellan 3 och 4. Men det är som du säger, vissa de har redan anammat det, det är inkorporerat i deras workflow som de kallar det, patientflödet. De ligger på höga användningar. Sen finns det vissa då som fortfarande arbetar igenom hur ska de använda CAD Score-systemet. Så det varierar, men det ligger mellan 3 och 4 per dag, vilket är högre än i Europa.
Just det. Bra. Och hur går arbetet med att komma in på nya IDNs?
Så IDNs är ju den kunden som kommer ta längst tid därför att man ska igenom kommittéer. Det påminner lite faktiskt som svenska sjukvårdssystem. Man ska in på kommittéer, presentera vår lösning, hur vi kan förbättra deras effektivitet och kanske göra kostnadsbesparingar. Och sen ska det in i budgeten. Men i vissa fall så har vi faktiskt jobbat lite snabbare. I vissa fall så kommer det att ta tid. Men jag hoppas här inom kort att vi kan annonsera att vi har kommit in på ett fåtal och sen jobbar vi vidare. För det finns många IDNs runt om i landet och nu när vi har det här utökade geografiska footprint och med det här nya teamet som har kommit ombord då, så har vi fått öppna dörrar in på de här IDNs. Och det handlar lite om det också, att kunna gå in med ett team som redan har en trovärdighet och en kunskap och kontakter. Så att vi jobbar vidare på det.
Bra. Lite tid kvar här så jag tänkte vi kör sista frågan. Och jag tänkte du kunde kanske utveckla lite där på era mål för 2024. Det ser ju väldigt positivt ut om det skulle vara så att de uppfylls. Vad är det som, om vi kan ju börja med liksom, hur kommer det här vara fördelat? Det kommer vara nästan som en exponentiell kurva kan jag tänka mig. Att det blir liksom de sista kvartalen i 2024 som får stå för en ganska stor del. Och vad är det som kommer driva den här exponentiella utvecklingen?
Jättebra fråga. Och vi har ju, alla inom bolaget vet ju vad vår mål är. Och det är någonting som vi driver mot. Vi har ju de olika säljkanalerna. Det är ju så vi tänker. Vi har kortsiktiga mål och vi har långsiktiga mål. När som den här VA, nu kommer inte alla VA att lägga en första order på 11 system. Men det är en annan magnitud när man kommer in på de här större systemen. Så där tar det lite längre tid att få försäljningsorder och sen kan vi bygga vidare. Men sen på kort sikt så kan vi jobba med kliniker där säljtiden är lite kortare. Men vi jobbar systematiskt och vi har en plan att nå de här målen. Och än så länge så gör vi ingen förändring. Därför att USA, det handlar mycket om att lägga en bra grund och sen kan vi bygga utifrån det. Och nu har vi ACC stödde våran workflow. Och sen har vi kontakterna in på de här stora sjukhusen och den kredibiliteten som det teamet har genom Complemed. Så vi jobbar vidare och vi håller det här än så länge. Och redan, om man tittar då på bruttomarginalen, där ligger vi redan över och vi ska försöka hålla det.
Mm. Ja, men superbra. Spännande framtid att följa här nu då. Tack så mycket Helen,
tack
för att du ville delta.
Ja, tack så mycket. Hej då.
Tack så mycket. Hej då.